2,000 years after his assassination, he is still revered as one of the greatest rulers in all of history. Yet his story reverberates as a tale of the dangers of power unbounded. His military genius and political skill saw him rise to the position of dictator for life, but it all came to a bloody end on the Ides of March. In this week's Biographics, we discover the man who was Caesar. Gaius Julius Caesar was born on either the 12th or the 13th of July in the year 100 BCE. His was a patrician family which historically had political sway, but was not influential at the time of Caesar's birth. His father, Gaius, was a praetor or an elected magistrate and was the governor of the province of Asia, while his mother, Aurelia, belonged to a family of some prominence. Caesar's aunt Julia was the wife of Gaius Marius, who was the leader of the popular faction political movement. We don't know very much about Caesar's childhood, but his education included the study of the Greek language, and he read the works of Greek historians. In his early teens, he began attending lectures on philosophy and rhetoric, showing a keen interest in developing his skills as a public speaker. At the time, this was something of a prized ability in Rome. The Roman Forum was the center of intellectual discussion and debate in Rome during Caesar's youth. It was there that political ideas were argued out, where questions were discussed and elections held. Any man who had ambition had to master the skill of holding the attention of their audience, and Julius Caesar, he was showing himself to be a young man of quite some ambition. Tragedy struck the Caesar household, though, in 85 CE, when Gaius Senior died suddenly. The 16-year-old Julius was now the head of the family. He inherited this leadership at the very time that civil war was breaking out between the popular faction led by his uncle Gaius Marius and his political rival Lucius Cornelius Sulla. After a bitter and bloody struggle, Sulla gained the ascendancy. Gaius, he was exiled to Africa, and he died shortly thereafter. With Sulla now in power, those who had ties to Gaius Marius were put under pressure. Having married the daughter of a prominent member of the popular faction, Cornelia, the teen Caesar, he became a bit of a target. Sulla ordered that he break off the marriage and distance himself from Gaius Marius. Caesar refused and was proscribed by Sulla, meaning that he was marked to be executed. The 18-year-old Caesar was now forced into hiding. It was only the influence of his mother's family that led to Sulla lifting this death sentence. Still, Caesar was understandably wary of Sulla. He decided that it would be safer for him to be away from Rome while Sulla ruled the city. Caesar now set his sights on a military career. Initially, he served under Marcus Minimus Thermus. He proved to be a natural soldier, serving with distinction in the provinces of Asia and Cilicia. In 79 BCE, he was awarded the oak leaves of the civic crown for saving the life of a citizen in the heat of battle. Caesar's rising military stature led to him being chosen as an emissary to the king of Bithynia, Nicodemus, in order to exact a promise for a fleet of ships. He was successful in his mission. However, rumors spread that he had only managed to persuade the king by agreeing to sleep with him. In 78 BCE, Sulla died, opening the way for Caesar to return to Rome. Having left the army, he began a career as a legal advocate. With his inheritance having been confiscated during the reign of Sulla, he and his wife lived a modest lifestyle in the lower-class neighborhood of Suburra. Through his legal representations, Caesar began to develop a reputation as a powerful and passionate public speaker. In 75 BCE, while on his way to advance his studies in Greece, Caesar was kidnapped by Sicilian pirates and held for ransom. It is reputed that when the pirates told him they had demanded 20 talents for his release, he was insulted and insisted that they increase it to 50 talents. He was treated well by the pirates and had a relaxed time with them. However, before the ransom was paid and he was released, he vowed to them that he would hunt them down and have them crucified. He was good to his word, raising a group of volunteers and overpowering his former captors. Prior to their execution, he had the pirates' throats cut as a show of leniency for their having treated him well. Shortly after his pirate escapade, Caesar was recalled into military service. He was sent to the province of Asia and tasked with raising a volunteer force to put down a rebellion. Upon successful completion of this mission, he returned to Rome and was duly appointed as a military tribune. It was the first step of his political career. Caesar was not shy about espousing his support for the popular faction, which had been put down by Sulla years before. He took on the prominent case of arraigning the governor of Macedonia, Dolabella, who had been closely associated with Sulla. When the trial came, Caesar appeared at the forum. The force and vigor with which he orated his arguments won him great public support. In opposing Dolabella, Caesar was positioning himself as the people's champion. He was increasingly being seen as the natural inheritor of Marius in order to head up the popular faction. With Sulla's supporters still in the ascendancy, however, Dolabella was acquitted. But the case had made Julius Caesar one of the most conspicuous men in all of Rome. Caesar loved the prominence that he was receiving. He began to take on the character of the leader of the popular party. He spoke fluently in the forum, both before popular assemblies and in the courts of justice. In his legal role, he came to specialize in defending those who were accused of political crimes. Through his energy and boldness, not to mention the strength of logic and reasoning that he demonstrated, he became the rising champion of the people. When Caesar's aunt, the wife of Marius, Julia, died, he arranged to hold a prominent funeral for her. Since the time of the suppression of her husband and the party he headed, Julia had lived in obscurity. In fact, any who associated with her were putting their lives in danger. Yet the fearless Caesar delivered a flattering funeral oration from the rostrum of the forum. He went as far as condemning the ouster of his uncle and producing images of Marius for the crowd to see. At this, certain patrician partisans in the audience, they began to object, but they were shouted down by the crowd. Before long, Caesar was delivering another funeral oration. This time, it was his own wife, Cornelia, who had died. In delivering the oration, he made the point of praising her family, who had been prominent members of the popular family. In both funeral orations, he emphasized the ancient nobility of his family, claiming descent from the first king on his mother's side and from the gods on his father's side. Following the funeral for his wife, Caesar was appointed as a quaestor, a position which involved performing financial auditing duties. He traveled to Spain, where he served his quaestorship in 69 B.C.E. It is said that while in Spain, he came across a statue of Alexander the Great, which caused him to reflect on his life's accomplishments to date. He was now 32, the same age at which Alexander had managed to achieve world dominance. In comparison, he had achieved nothing of significance. He resolved to change that situation. Upon returning to Rome, Caesar's prominence and popularity saw him being elected to a succession of public offices. Then, in 67 BCE, he was appointed to the Senate. In that same year, he married the granddaughter of Sulla, Pompeia. The marriage only lasted 6 years, with Caesar divorcing her when she became caught up in a damaging political scandal. In 67 BCE, Caesar was appointed as a formal magistrate. Around this time, he began to engage in the popular custom of cementing public favor by staging lavish entertainment spectacles. These included games with wild beasts and gladiators being brought in from all over the realm. These extravagant displays served their purpose of making Caesar extremely popular with the masses, but they also put a huge strain on his finances. In fact, they plunged him into debt. The only way that he could possibly extricate himself from his financial woes was by rising to a position of ultimate power. In 63 BCE, Caesar set his sights on the position of Pontifex Maximus, or chief priest. He spent even more borrowed money on popular support, and despite being opposed by two powerful senators, he won the position handily. The following year, he was appointed as propraetor, or pro-magistrate, in an area of southern Spain. Before he could take up the position, however, he was required to settle his outstanding debts. For this, he turned to one of the city's richest men, Marcus Licinius Crassus. Crassus agreed to help Caesar financially on the basis that he would, in turn, provide political influence in Crassus's favor. Caesar now traveled to Spain, where he proved to be a successful administrator. He achieved both military and financial success, returning to Rome with enough money to pay off all of his debts. Caesar, he was now in a position to set his sights on the highest political office in Rome, the office of consul. When the Romans had gotten rid of their line of kings, they had vested supreme magistracy in the hands of two consuls. These men were chosen each year in a general election. If it was left to the people, Caesar would have had no problem gaining the needed votes, such was his popularity among them. However, there were a number of influential political rivals who opposed him. At the time, there was a bitter rivalry unfolding between two men of great influence, Pompey and Crassus. Pompey was a great military leader, while Crassus held influence due to his wealth. Caesar conceived of the plan to unite them and then get both of them to back him for consul. He succeeded brilliantly in his plan, managing to create a triumvirate of the three most influential politicians in Rome, each of whom was bound to advance the political elevation of the others. In order to secure his alliance with Pompey, Caesar arranged for his only daughter Julia to enter into a marriage alliance with Pompey. With the support of Crassus and Pompey behind him, Caesar set about securing his appointment to the consul. His political opponents knew that they would be unable to prevent public support from securing the consulship for Caesar, so they set their sights on preventing Caesar's preferred co-consul, a man named Lucius, from achieving office. They put forward Bibulus, who was a political opponent to Caesar, for the position. Caesar and Bibulus were elected co-consuls for the year 59 BCE. However, Caesar immediately proceeded to ignore his colleague, assuming full power and carrying out measures unilaterally that were geared to ingratiate himself with the people. Caesar was opposed by leading members of the Senate. One of his firmest opponents was Cato, a fervent patriot who was incensed at Caesar's unilateral decision-making. At one point, Caesar ordered that Cato be taken into custody and thrown in prison. As he was being escorted out by guards, another influential senator rose to accompany him. When Caesar asked where he was going, he replied that he would rather be in prison with Cato than in the Senate with Caesar. Caesar's control of the consulship was so complete that his supposed co-consul gave up entirely, retiring to his house and leaving Caesar free rein. Caesar followed his year as consul by re-embarking upon his military career. By achieving great military conquest, he would ensure that his star rose even higher. His powerful political allies helped Caesar to secure proconsulship over 3 provinces for an unprecedented 5-year governorship. He became governor of Illyricum in the Balkans, Cisalpine Gaul in northern Italy, and Transalpine Gaul in southern France. Caesar's first opportunity for conquest came when southeastern Gaul was invaded by a tribe known as the Helvetii. Caesar moved against them with 6 legions and crushed them during a fierce 5-hour battle. He then turned his attention to the Germanic tribes. Despite the formidable reputation of these warriors, the Roman legions managed to defeat them at the Battle of Vosges. By 57 BCE, Caesar had built his army to 8 legions, numbering some 40,000 men. He now set out to subjugate the Belgae tribes, decimating each one individually before they could unite against him. The final victory came at the Battle of Sabis, by which time Caesar had completely conquered the Gauls. With his power now unquestioned within his own territory, Caesar now began looking beyond known borders. He set his sights on Germania and Britannia. In 55 BCE, he built a bridge across the Rhine in a record 10 days, having it dismantled when he recrossed after spending 18 days probing the countryside. A similar scouting mission was made into Britannia later that same year. In 54 BCE, he returned with a full 5 legions, with the objective of establishing a permanent Roman base there. The Britons, though, they had other ideas, and they continually harassed the Romans with a hit-and-run attack strategy. Still, the determination of their leader and the discipline of their rank and file enabled the Romans to systematically hunt down the local resistance, and the Britons sued for peace. Caesar negotiated an annual tribute, took a swath of hostages, and then left, never to set foot on British soil again. In 53 BCE, a Gaulish revolt was quickly put down, but a year later, a more determined and better organized revolt occurred under the leadership of Vercingetorix, a powerful warrior who was determined to kick the Romans out of Gaul. Caesar set out to crush the revolt with a full complement of 10 legions. After suffering a number of losses, Vercingetorix switched to a scorched earth policy. At Gergovia, the Romans suffered their first defeat, but revenge came swiftly at the Battle of Alesia. The revolt was crushed, and Vercingetorix was taken alive and transported to Rome, where he was paraded in a cage like a wild animal. Then in 47 BC, Caesar embarked on a voyage to Turkey in order to take care of Pharnaces II, who had been extending his power by overpowering a number of neighboring Roman states. With just 3 legions, Caesar went directly to the town of Sulla to face Pharnaces. The Romans took up a strong position on the hilltop. The Turkish revolt was put down in quick order, giving rise to Caesar's most famous quote, "Veni, vidi, vici." I came, I saw, I conquered. Over the next 2 years, Caesar put down rebellions in North Africa and Hispania. During his years in military campaigns, Caesar sought to continue influencing Roman politics through his supporters. In 56 BCE, he met with his old allies Crassus and Pompeia in order to renew their triumvirate alliance. Over the next few years, however, the alliance broke down. In 53 BCE, Crassus was killed in battle. Meanwhile, Pompey was distancing himself from Caesar. About this time, Julia died during childbirth, further fragmenting the relationship between the two men. When rioting erupted in Rome in 52 BCE, Pompey was appointed to the consul without colleague. He quickly aligned himself with the Optimate faction of aristocrats who were opposed to Caesar. The following year, with Caesar's military conquests having been completed, the Optimates warned him that if he returned to Rome, he would be immediately arrested for excesses of office during his years as consul. Within the city, there had developed popular factions in support of both Pompey and Caesar. The latter's followers attempted to have him voted to the consul in absentia, but the opposition demanded that he first return to face the music and give up the command of his army. Caesar balked at these demands. He knew now that there was only one recourse. He had to march on Rome and claim what he rightfully saw as his. On January 10, 49 BCE, he marched a single legion across the Rubicon River, which marked the border of his province. This was an immediate act of civil war, yet there was to be no battle. Pompey, with most of his forces deployed in Spain, fled to the south. This enabled Caesar to march on Rome unhindered. There, he had himself declared dictator, with his top general, Mark Antony, as second in command. In short order, he was elected to the consulship, at which time he resigned his dictatorship. Caesar now set out in pursuit of Pompey, leaving Mark Antony in control of Rome. By now, Pompey had established himself in Greece and was building a force to challenge Caesar. In 48 BCE, the two armies met on the plains of Pharsalus, with Pompey's forces outnumbering those of Caesar 2-1. However, Caesar won by employing superior tactics. Pompey, though, he managed to escape to Egypt. Caesar pursued Pompey to Alexandria. There, he was supposed to be handed the head of his adversary, who had betrayed the Egyptians and paid the ultimate price. Just prior to Caesar's arrival in Alexandria, the joint ruler, 21-year-old Cleopatra, had been driven from the city. She had herself smuggled into Caesar's presence inside a rolled-up rug. She besieged him for assistance in regaining the throne. The Roman leader saw Cleopatra as a useful future ally and agreed to support her. A prolonged Egyptian siege of Alexandria followed. Caesar ordered the Egyptian fleet to be burned and managed to hold off a force of around 20,000 for several months. He sent to Rome for reinforcements, and when they turned up, he marched out to join them. In the ensuing battle, the Egyptians were defeated. Cleopatra was installed as pharaoh, and after spending a further 2 months enjoying her company, Caesar began the return journey to Rome. On his way back, he even put down a rebellion in Asia Minor. During his absence, things had not gone well in Rome, largely due to Mark Antony's mismanagement. Employing great diplomatic skills, Caesar managed to overcome a potential navy mutiny and put down a rebellion by the Optimates. Caesar was now appointed dictator for 10 years. At the height of his powers and enjoying unprecedented public support, he ruled autocratically. This caused great bitterness among the senators, who he ignored. Primary among the dissenters were the two sons of Pompey, Sextus and Gnaeus. These two headed to Spain and fomented a revolt there. Caesar was forced to travel to Spain to personally put down the rebellion. In February 44 BC, Caesar was appointed Dictator Perpetuus. During the ceremony, he refused to wear the diadem that Mark Antony handed to him, stating that Jupiter was the only rightful king of the Romans. He then prepared to lead a military campaign against the Parthians. Prior to his planned departure from Rome, Caesar attended a final meeting of the Senate. It was on the 15th of March, 44 BCE. Unknown to Caesar, 60 of his most bitter rivals in the Senate had come to the meeting with daggers concealed under their togas. Caesar entered the chamber and proceeded to make his way to his golden chair. At the designated signal, senators from all directions leapt upon him. As the first dagger blow came down upon him, Caesar was heard to cry out, "Why this violence?" Two of his supporters tried to come to his aid, but they were blocked by the conspirators. Within minutes, he had been stabbed 23 times. His final act was to cover his face with his toga so that none would see his death expression. Caesar died at the feet of a statue of Pompey. The conspirators wanted to throw his body into the Tiber River, but they were stopped by Mark Antony. The announcement that Caesar was dead was met with rioting by the people, and the conspirators were forced to flee the city. Caesar's body was cremated, with the Temple of Caesar being built on the cremation site. From that point on, the legend of the martyred Caesar would be passed down through the centuries. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for brand new biographies every Monday and every Thursday. Also, I've got another channel, it's called Today I Found Out. It's sort of like Biographics, but way more broad. On that channel, we get deep into all of the details on all sorts of interesting stuff. Check it out through the link on the screen now. But if you're looking for something else to watch right now, why not check out a biography from the archives or a Today I Found Out video over there on the right. And as always, thank you for watching.